Welcome to an all-new episode of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. This is Corey Richmond, joined by Jason Brooks. Jason, another interesting week in professional wrestling. We found out that Drew McIntyre is out with COVID. The speculation of Jay White possibly leaving New Japan Wrestling continues to become more and more intriguing with him not being on the new beginning cards that happened at the end of the month. We had the debut of MSK, which is the former team from Impact Wrestling known as the Rascals. And we've had a really solid women's match for the NWA Women's Championship, not the AEW title. So, Jay, how you doing today?
Good. I watched the shows yesterday, AEW and NXT, and it wasn't like, oh my God, these were blowaway shows, but they were just really good, enjoyable shows. And it's nice to watch that. It's nice to have good, enjoyable shows to watch. So thought one of the best women's matches AEW's had on TV in a long time, which kind of tells you more about the state of their women's division, which we'll talk about at some point. But yeah, looking forward to talking wrestling with you this week.
Absolutely. And before we forget, you could always check us out online on Twitter at WorkShootPod and also on Instagram, which our sister podcast, You Don't Know Jackie, one of their hosts, Jackie Endy, takes care of putting up some of our more interesting conversations on our Instagram account every week. I'd like to thank her. And of course, check out that podcast, which we'll talk about more as the podcasts go on. But Jay, the biggest story of the week, I think by far, how much would you like to go and talk about, the future of Jay White, Ricochet, and possibly others, has got to be the WWE champion, the guy who they hope is the future. Drew McIntyre is out for, at least the next 10 to 14 days as we get ready for the go-home, last couple episodes of Monday Night Raw for the Royal Rumble and Goldberg, as you get ready to drink a very interesting-looking beer there, which will let us know which that is momentarily. But Drew McIntyre is out with COVID. And I think that makes this a little bit different than, some of the other cases of like AJ Styles and Renee Young and some other people. WWE went and let us know, and they let one of their biggest stars, Drew McIntyre, actually get on the microphone and say he has COVID, wear a mask, it's important. It's basically the first time since this all happened, the WWE actually acknowledged COVID exists. AEW, we've learned over time, Nick Jackson and Jericho, other people have had it, and we may have not found out right away. They've at least acknowledged it, that this virus is something that is going on in this world. But WWE took the first step of actually, acknowledging on TV with their product this thing exists.
Yeah, I mean, Jericho's a little bit, I think, of a COVID truther, but
I got you.
But I didn't even know AJ Styles had it. I mean, which is whatever, HIPAA, you don't need to know that people had it. It's been March, right? It's been March since we've known about this. This is the first time the WWE is mentioning to the fans, put on a mask. It's a good idea, but they try to make it like it didn't exist. And then there's all these problems in NXT in terms of the wrestlers coming back, not necessarily like the show, but in terms of the training, because there's a bunch of guys there who have COVID. They only test once a week. So WWE, we know they've been a complete disaster with COVID and the protocols and the COVID truthers and all this stuff from the beginning. But they had their baby face, and that's the other thing that's gross about this. They could have had anybody talk about this, anybody who's gotten it over the past, have everybody who has gotten it, have them do a little clip saying why it's important, why you should stay safe, why you should wear a mask. They could have had a whole campaign months ago about it. So it's gross that it took them this long, but I'll acknowledge that I at least did it. And, Drew very much put it over, said you got to wear a mask. It's important. I don't have any symptoms, but it's out there. And so he sounded like he did a pretty good job with it from what I heard. And hopefully, obviously, he's doing okay and, things of that nature. So, yeah, but it's just WWE is ridiculous.
Now, we've heard from people like Sean Ross Sapp, who's been on top of this, that this could be the beginning of a lot of other things coming out for a tough week with WWE. I mean, there's other people who said, if you haven't seen someone for, the last week or two, and they're just not putting it out because, maybe they're not a champion. And the people you saw working double duty on the show, you saw, the tag team match between Miz and Morrison against Keith Lee and Sheamus. And then you wound up having Sheamus versus Keith Lee right after it. This is what happened the first time we had the big spread. You saw people.
I guess they said there were people backstage who didn't get used, and they were pissed about it. So I don't know that was COVID related, or we don't believe in any of these people related. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, you're definitely, when we didn't see Austin Theory for a while, we're like, what happened to him? It's like, oh,
that might be some other stuff too, but
maybe some other stuff too.
But it's gonna be interesting. I mean, I'm not spreading rumors here or anything, but we haven't seen Asuka, we haven't seen Io Shirai, in a couple of weeks. Other people we haven't seen. So you wonder if it's just like an Io Shirai, they're just selling the injury angle from Mercedes Martinez, or if maybe she might have been in contact with somebody like Thunder Rosa when it's come to AEW. That's the reason why they've put that match on hold for a couple. Well,
I don't want to get into. I don't want to get into this person, but we don't know about any of that. And they've done that with Io Shirai hasn't been on TV for a while. I mean, they've done that. So, who knows, right? But just the fact they continue to have these outbreaks is concerning. It's concerning. And to AEW's credit, I don't know. Maybe they've had a bunch of massive breakouts, and I don't know. But I don't think that they have. Obviously, guys and gals have gotten it. That's what's going to happen. It's COVID. It's an incredible disease that spreads incredibly fast. But it sounds like it hasn't become a widespread issue in AEW like it has in the WWE.
I mean, you wonder though. Like I said, we didn't know about Nick Jackson until like last week, and so you don't know what may or may not be coming out slowly. Like you said, because of HIPAA laws, we don't always know what happens. But just like in real life in the country, the fact that people got together on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and people like on New Year's, all of a sudden things are spreading. So I mean, I don't know where or how we're going to continue in regards to this, but I do wonder, and this is a big thing that I think is an issue here. If Drew McIntyre was not the champion, do you think we would have found out and didn't have this big title match coming out on Royal Rumble weekend? Do you think we would have known that he had COVID? Or do you think because he's the world champion and they have this match that they don't want to go and have to last minute, like Roman Reigns, give up on again? That's kind of maybe the reason why we found out about this.
You answered the question, right? Of course. They haven't mentioned it in it's January 14th. They mentioned it on January 10th. The reports about COVID came out at the end of March. I'm not saying they had to mention it in March, in April, May, June. They had months and months to figure this out, to say something about it, to talk about it, and they never did. And now when their champion gets it and they get a chance to put it, it's kind of like what CM Punk said, how he would want to get acting roles and they would give it to Cena or whatever kind of person they wanted, to put over. So it's gross, but I do think that plays a big factor in why he did it and why they let him say that.
So before
it was a very positive message, so we can move on from that.
So before we move on, I guess there's two things that came out as a result of it. Drew McIntyre was supposed to face Randy Orton in the main event, as which of course it wasn't going to help, but they were going up against the college football championship game, which turned out to get a really good rating, and Raw did what it did. It went down from Legends Night, but it was expected going up against a huge football game. But we had as a result the return of Triple H. He had the promo at the beginning. He had a 3-minute match.
He's more concerned with Ric Flair getting disrespected and human beings being burnt alive. The promo was a little strange, little strange.
So I guess my question is, quickly before we move on to a lot more things, seeing Triple H return for 3-minute match, which is basically a street fight, him doing a promo. He's been the mainstay behind the scenes with NXT, as basically Daddy NXT. After not being in the ring for over a year, do you want to see him back? Do you think he'd be a good addition to occasionally being on Monday Night Raw? Or we saw him once, we saw him a couple times when SmackDowns were live, having some fun announcing, but otherwise his time in the ring is over. Let him just be behind the scenes guy.
I'm good. I'm good. I don't. They need to make more people. They need to make their young guys into a guy that could be a Triple H. That's what they need to work on. They don't need to bring Triple H back. The one-time thing, Triple H is great on the mic. And so although his promo was kind of weird, it still like fired you up a little bit. It brought some energy to the show instead of starting the show off with Miz and Morris and every Raw. So it brought a little bit of oomph to the show. So I wouldn't mind having him more involved, but I certainly don't need him out there having matches every week.
So, speaking, we spoke about her, and she has appeared in the comments. Jackie Endy trying to get herself over. She wrote, if he's out, who's going to win? McIntyre is the only one winning in the WWE. That is, basically kind of true. With McIntyre out, and we all hope that he's asymptomatic and he's only out for, a week or so, and we wind up having the Goldberg match. What do they do here? Is there somebody else? And that's the big thing why Goldberg apparently is in this situation, headlining at Royal Rumble. Is there someone else who's ready? Is Sheamus taking his place? Is Keith Lee taking his place? I mean,
yeah, I definitely think they set up Keith Lee to win in case they have to go that route. I don't think they will, because if he's only symptomatic for a certain period of time. So it really would just be if he's sick. By Royal Rumble, he wouldn't be symptomatic anymore. So, or he wouldn't be contagious, I should say. He wouldn't be able to give it to someone else from everything like the CDC says. So it depends on if he's, ill or not. Yeah, I mean, at that point, just don't have a fucking match. Don't have a match. Leave Goldberg alone and don't have a match. Because I mean, he's just so bad in the ring. He's old. He wasn't good years ago. It's like, good God. They're showing highlights of him in WCW. That was 20 years ago. That was more than 20 years ago. What are we doing here? Oh, anyway.
I don't disagree.
Anyway, I think you could see Keith Lee versus Goldberg if Drew McIntyre does, if he's sick and can't go. That would be my guess. Just because they've made Keith Lee look like kind of the biggest star lately. But, who knows? I think maybe they wait until Mania.
Well, speaking of the Royal Rumble, we've found out a couple people are in it. But the show that, unfortunately, because we do the show on Thursday, every week we wind up never really talking about it. We kind of have, at least on paper, what the second world title match for the Royal Rumble show is. And Jay, for the people not watching the video, is trying to keep the laughs inside. We've got Strap Iron Pierce, former NWA champion, but this is quite a while ago, will be, at least on paper, as I say, facing Roman Reigns. You basically turned Nakamura into a babyface in a gauntlet, made him look like a star for the first time in quite a few years. Jay, what does your gut say? Do we get Nakamura versus Reigns? Do we get a returning Owens versus Reigns? Do we actually get Pierce versus Reigns? What do we get as our quote-unquote co-main event for Royal Rumble? We get a four-way? I mean, what do we...
I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I think maybe, well, okay, they're going to have 2 Royal Rumble matches, which take forever. These pay-per-views have not been as long as they used to be back in I don't want to say our day, but even as opposed to before the network. When you were paying $60 a month, they wanted to give you $60 worth as much as they could. So they would have pretty long shows. These shows sometimes end after 2.5 hours. So you can see them having a squash match with Reigns. The Goldberg match, that match can't be long. He can't wrestle more than like 2 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
So you would think they would have one workhorse match and then a Goldberg match. So yeah, I mean, it would make sense that they would get cute and throw some stuff in there. I don't know. The problem is it's hard to make it, they don't have enough time to give him a compelling storyline to go into this show. So maybe they do something with Nakamura, but it's not going to be compelling because it's just to move things along. So, I don't know. I really, and so the Pierce thing is, I don't really care that much about the match, but it was compelling on how they got there. And I noted that on Twitter at Work to Shoot Pod. So I don't really care about either title match because we know neither person's going to lose. I think Reigns has his belt through WrestleMania for a long time, and I think Drew probably has it for a while. So I don't totally care how they get to it. And we know Pierce has been, he's been a great wrestler in the past. So, he can figure out how to wrestle a good 5-minute match, or maybe he'll just get his ass kicked for 5 minutes. So I don't know where they go. I don't know. It'd be pure speculation at this point. But it is strange that they would have two basically short matches on the show, and you can't have Pierce have a legitimate match against Reigns. Like, that would make him look good. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. For all this time, Pierce was most likely trying to get into the WWE for years, and now that he's an authority figure, he's actually might get an actual match against a champion. It's kind of funny. He put in all those years, and he wound up getting a role as a backstage producer, and now he's getting a match possibly a match for the championship, but the second biggest or third biggest show of the year. It is kind of funny. So it'll be interesting to see where they go there. I mean, it would be interesting over the next 2 weeks to see how they build interest into this match if it does happen. I think we most likely in the next 2 weeks we might get a Nakamura versus Roman Reigns, maybe either a non-title match or a title match on SmackDown. And I could see them maybe somehow them injuring Pierce and still setting up another match because of the good chemistry they've had with Owens.
Here's the bigger question. Do we care?
I kind of care about Owens because I think they've had a good feud, and Owens has had really good promos, and I think they've all had good promos in this whole type thing. So I mean, I think it works.
All right. I mean, I hope that they do something with Owens moving forward, absolutely. But I don't think he needs to be in this match. Mm-hmm. I could see him maybe winning the Rumble. There's a lot of different candidates, which we'll get into. So I could see him possibly coming back, and he's hurt and he wins the Rumble. The problem is you're going to put him in another match and he's going to get his ass kicked again. I don't know that I love that idea. That does not excite me at all. So
yeah, no, I understand. Like I said, the big problem is as we move on, the undercard for the WWE right now is so underdeveloped. The only thing that truly matters are your huge names, and there are no huge names right now. So the product is really struggling, and that's a thing for another week as we get closer to the Rumble. We'll talk about over the next 2 weeks. But Jay, the other big story that we kind of spoke about last week, and we kind of took this is just an angle for New Japan, was that Jay White could be leaving after Wrestle Kingdom. We were all under the idea he did that press conference, then he had the match New Year's Dash where he lost clean in the 8-man to Ishii, putting him over, saying, he was done, he was going home, he had left his family for the last 3 years, he hadn't seen anybody, being basically the super heel, saying he's had enough. But now, depending on what reports you hear, Dave Meltzer said that 2 years ago he signed a new 7-year deal. Other people have said that he signed a deal a long time ago and it's over. Every year, Japan at the end of January, your deals come up. He's not on the new beginning cards. I mean, other people have said he was never going to be on the new beginning cards. In March, New Japan Cup is happening, and a mock-up poster he was on at first. He's no longer on the New Japan website under the Bullet Club. So this is either New Japan and Gato just continuing to play with the fans and seeing all the buzz it's getting. Your gut feeling right now. We'll get into in a minute, how much he could help another company. Is Gato screwing with the world, or is he a free?
Yeah, I mean, this is pro wrestling, right? It's probably a work. They're taking him off the posters. Come on, that's the biggest work sign ever. They're taking him off the fucking posters. Get out of here. They were taking him off the posters if he signed with another company, not if they're trying to keep him going. This sounds like a real work to me. First of all, why are you signing a 7-year contract at 25 years old? That makes no sense to me. But whatever, to each their own. Financial stability, whatever.
Well, I can give you 3 letters that may be the reason why. 2 years ago was the start of AEW, just like reason WWE was signed.
No. I'm saying the length of the contract. The length of the contract seems to be very, very.
Oh, no, I'm just at that point. But
And also, if he would have signed 2 years ago, that's about the time they gave him the belt.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to rush giving him the belt. If we we all remember this correctly, they seem like it's like, oh man, they just gave him the title that quick. So yeah. So who knows? Maybe it was a 7-year deal. It seems to be ridiculous to me. But if he did sign a contract a couple of years ago, whether it's 7 years or whatever, like it wouldn't be expired. If it was 5 years, which a lot of guys seem to generally sign, it wouldn't be expiring. So, and I guess, if he thinks about it and he's a free agent at 32 and he's been wrestling for so long, and he'll still be in his prime basically at 32 and he can go to the US. So I guess maybe from his standpoint, that's what he was thinking. I think it's a work. I think there's, if you had to ask me now, if he leaves, then sure. I mean, that's possible, but I don't see it. And look at how much buzz it's creating. Like, if the intention was to get buzz, they are doing what they intended to do.
I agree. And I'm sure these things are cut way in advance, but we were both watching Wrestle Kingdom, and this is something I didn't bring up last week. I didn't think about it until actually about 2 seconds ago. But if you remember the video for saying, New Japan is coming back to the US and Britain on TV, he's in that video quite prominently. So, I mean, you would think, and who knows, maybe, like I said, it was cut quite a while ago and one has nothing to do with the other. You wouldn't put the guy who is supposedly leaving in, a couple of days as a main guy in your video to promote the fact you're going back to US television.
Also, it probably would be a different angle of him just saying, I quit. They probably would do something different than him cutting this promo, and everybody should go and check it out. I think it's on YouTube, so I think you can get it for free, right? Jay White's promo after. Okay. Jay White after the Ibushi match. It is spectacular, but so I don't think he goes anywhere. I think it's a total work.
All right, so let's take it the other part of this though for a second, because of the potential he has as a talker, in-ring worker. If he was available on the open market, we understand AEW has such a bloated male roster that anyone who's a free agent might get lost in the shuffle unless you're the biggest name out there, Brock Lesnar, and they would just put you right to the top, and everybody else there just get say, "Oops, Brock Lesnar's here. We're giving him the title most likely." But where would you say the best fit would be for Jay White if he were to leave New Japan Pro Wrestling? Is it main roster WWE? Is it NXT, MLW, ROH, going back there? Where's the best fit for him?
It depends on a lot of factors. First being his pocketbook. How much money does he want to make? And then opportunity. I think in NXT, he would be just spectacular. Like, they need someone like him. He would be just spectacular. The main roster could use him. And we've talked about this on the Wrestle Life page about what Jay White could be. I think if the WWE signs him, if he's available and the WWE signs him, he comes up to the main roster immediately and is, a star. They push him. He gets a push anyway. And you could say, oh, the fans don't know him. And that's all true. But a couple of things. He wrestles a WWE style. He wrestles a kind of slower pace style. He's a tremendous heel. He's great on the mic. He's big enough for the WWE. He really knows his character well and who he is. Unlike a lot of other guys, right? And I think he would just fit what the WWE wants, other than being, 6'5" and 300 pounds. Other than that, for a smaller size guy, a Seth Rollins size guy, I think he absolutely could get a big push. I think if they signed him, they'd bring him up to the main roster immediately, and I think he'd be in a big match at WrestleMania. I think he would only probably leave under those circumstances on the main roster or go to NXT and you're going to be a star in NXT. AEW doesn't make any sense. I mean, Rusev's fighting over video games, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense to go to AEW. MLW's, smaller, and Ring of Honor has money, but they're also kind of smaller and stuff like that. it would be NXT or WWE main roster. But WWE main roster, he would be making big money, probably. So a lot of it really depends on how much he wants to make and how big of a star he wants to be. But I get, there's some interview a couple of years ago with him talking about like getting lost in the shuffle and NXT and whatever. He wouldn't get lost in the shuffle in NXT. Not the way NXT is now. They've lost so many people. There's no way. Russ Taylor, who is now Tyler Rust or whatever. He was in Ring of Honor. He was in the ring. Yeah, it's weird. He was in Ring of Honor Pure Tournament, and they brought him up to NXT, and he's involved in NXT. So I think if you're good in NXT, I don't think you'll get lost. If you're someone who hasn't wrestled before, like there's a couple of people who haven't really wrestled, so they're figuring them out. But he won't get lost. Mm-hmm. So, and people have said, oh, well, what's he going to do for the ratings? Like, who knows? Who knows what any of these people do for the ratings? But we do know the main roster needs good people who are good. And I think he could do really well for them. And NXT, he would be what they're trying to do with Killer Cross now. Where Killer Cross seems like really it's getting over Scarlett Bordeaux. But they would put Jay White in the main title picture immediately, and he would deserve it, and he would shine. So I'd love to see him in NXT. I would absolutely love it. But, I'm an NXT mark, and the main roster, they'll book him strong for a few months, and then he'll be wrestling, Ricochet on main events in a few months after that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I just think the AEW roster is so many people, and I'm not saying people on there don't deserve to be there, but there's too many people on that roster. Impact doesn't have a big enough audience. I mean, I think they would give him the title within like 4 or 5 months, especially with the guys like Willie Mack and Moose most likely leaving that company soon. So there's openings there, but it's just not a big enough reach. Like I said, MLW is not a big enough place. I mean, if you go to MLW, mostly working multiple places. I think you're right. I think WWE main roster, because of his style, is the right fit. I think he's really good on the mic. I think he'd be able to get over pretty fast.
Corey, let me ask you this. So we did debate on Wrestle Life about this. I said if he goes to the main roster, I said if he goes to the main roster, he's in one of the big matches. One, because he has leverage. He could go to a bunch of different places. Even Ring of Honor, he could go there and at least make good money. So one, he has leverage, and two, he's good. And the WWE needs someone like him. I mean, look at who's in the fucking main event of Royal Rumble, right? 55-year-old Goldberg. Do you think if he goes to the WWE company, WWE or NXT, what do you think they would do with him? What do you think he would be immediately?
I think I don't think he's in the main event of WrestleMania this year, but I mean, I think
not in the main event, but
I mean, if he's on SmackDown, I mean, I think he could be a middle. I mean, like a number 3 heel, maybe. I could see him.
I don't know if I agree with that. Why would he go there for that? I don't think he would go. Why would you leave if they're paying him good money and he is enjoying?
I mean,
what?
I don't think to start off. I mean, if you're saying when he first gets there, I don't think he's going to be bigger than Seth Rollins and who's the number? Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns if he goes to SmackDown right away. I mean, you're telling me he's going to take
if he's
I'm saying he's number 3 heel. He's bigger than Baron Corbin and whatever other guys they have, or other guys. I mean, if he goes to Raw, I mean, would he be? I think he could be like the number 2, like maybe the number 2 heel on that brand. I mean, I'm just saying.
And also, here's the other factor. He's young.
Yeah.
How many of these guys come to NXT or WWE? Samoa Joe, Finn Balor, Keith Lee. I think Dijak's a little younger.
And they were already 30.
A lot of these guys,
yeah.
A lot of these guys are in their mid to upper. Robert Roode, I think he's like older than us, right? So you have these guys who are mostly older. Jay White is young. He's young. And they could say, listen, this guy is a talent. He's already fantastic in the ring. He's already great in the mic. Like, this could be our next Randy Orton. And so it'd be so dumb for them to not push him but they do a lot of dumb things. So I don't know. I think a lot of different things can happen. You guys can let us know in the chat and Wrestle Life. You can let us know on Twitter too at Work Shoot Pod. What do you think happens to Jay White if he goes to the WWE? Does he go to NXT? Does he go to WWE? Is he a mid Carter? Is he more of a main eventer? Let us know.
Absolutely. So before we get into some other subjects, quickly, the other thing that's come out is that Ricochet, who signed back in January of 2018, apparently signed a 3-year deal, and unlike a Matt Riddle, who signed at about the same time, there has not re-signed his deal. So apparently, at the end of the month, he's going to have some options. He's been, since coming up to the main roster, besides a small run with I believe, the U.S. title and a win against the Good Brothers, and I think one win against AJ Styles, which quickly, was given right back. He really has not been used great on the main roster. Jay, I'm going to ask you the same question. If he does leave, what's the best option for him? Is it Impact, ROH, AEW? I mean, MLW. Wait until borders open and do some sort of deal with going back to New Japan. I mean, what's his best option?
The one thing, Ricochet was a guy who you would think there's no way he's going to fail. And, Vince figured out a way. But we blame a lot on Vince and the booking. But some of this is on Ricochet, too. I always thought, man, I think he could figure out, the talking piece. I think he could get there. And he never got there. He did the superhero thing. I'm a superhero or whatever. So stupid. And he never figured out how he could translate his kind of in-ring charisma and his moveset to being someone who could talk, who would be compelling to the audience. And that's a hard thing. I mean, Kofi didn't talk for years, but Kofi wasn't, they gave him time to figure it out, right? And Ricochet just has not gotten better on the mic. He never has. He's a guy who we said before probably needed a manager, probably needed, whatever. And so it's a shame because, he has all the qualities of being a star in ring. He's a good looking guy. He seems like a really nice guy, except he can't talk. And not only is it that he can't talk, he's not compelling. Like you could tell he's like trying to remember the words he's trying to say. So it's not something where you feel like you're getting anything from him. Like when Adam Cole cuts a promo, like you feel like you're not listening to someone trying to remember lines. Or when Daniel Bryan cuts a promo, a babyface promo, that's not someone trying to remember lines. And he's never gotten there. And it's a shame. Where he goes, Corey, Impact. Ugh, and I like Impact, and I don't want to do this. He's too good for Impact, but he's too good for Impact. He is. They'd have to make him the champion immediately. Who else is there? Who else is in that company that's better than him? There's not a person.
That's a great question, and you absolutely. Let me take this also.
Go ahead.
Let me take this one other angle. Has his 3 years in WWE, has it scarred his not his popularity, but is he one of those guys when he goes on the free agent market? Is he going to be thought of as the Ricochet from 3 years ago who was having that clip that took over the wrestling world with Will Ospreay, or has the stink of the WWE and the way he's been booked? Do you think that will hurt him? Is he basically going to be going on the free agent market, being Cody Rhodes, and be able to go do whatever he wants, or is he kind of going to have a little bit of like, oh boy, is Ricochet even being down by a system so much that we're not sure if he's still the same Ricochet?
Yeah, I don't know. I remember Tony Khan was in an interview and he said that Rusev needed to be built up because of what the WWE did to him over the last couple of years, and then they made him be where the best man and wrestle for video games. But so they really built him up. We'll see what happens with
They
Rusev.
built a
But
pop, you know.
yeah. No, they've done great, but I think a lot of that's Pac. So yeah. So Pac went to England. He built himself up. He
Sure.
established himself again, and then he became a big. He's one of the best wrestlers in the world, right? To say Ricochet he turned down a lot of money from Lucha Underground, right, to go to the WWE.
To resign,
And I think, I think it's is he a bit tainted? Maybe. Could he's not, you think about like him to Jay White, right? Jay White just wrestled the longest match in history of Wrestle Kingdom. All these things about him. And Ricochet obviously is not that. So I don't know where he is. I'm not sure what type of level he is.
I mean, if I was him, and you could tell me maybe I'm crazy, but does he have to go to like MLW for a couple months to do like a Leo Rush and have a great match against, Mayan Reed, like, or ACH, and doing like Best of the Super Juniors, get his name back out there and kind of reestablish the fact that before going to WWE, he was Ricochet, King of the Indies, the best high flyer besides Will Ospreay in the world. Does he have to reestablish who he was by maybe doing a short-term deal like an MLW or someone just to go and show?
I think he can't be Ricochet. I think he has to be a little bit more cutting edge. Look at Moxley after he left the WWE, where he did that video. He needs to, Leo Rush, what he's trying to, he needs to do something. He can't just be, I'm the future of flight, I'm the superhero. He needs to change up a bit of who he is.
Yeah. Hopefully, if he's Leo Rush and he gets on MTV The Challenge, he's doing pretty well for himself. That's little plug. That's one of Jackie Endy's one of her shows she watches. She actually told me he was on there. One of those shows that actually beat AEW and NXT in the ratings this week, but we'll get into that.
Well, the show does well. But look at Leo Rush, what he's done, right? He was in New Japan on the Super J Cup. He's the MLW middleweight champion. He's tweeting stuff all the time, like, where am I gonna go? Where am I gonna be a free? You gotta give people some suspense. He's putting pictures of Hiromu up. You know what I mean? He's giving people some, that's the picture he put up recently. He's giving people some level of suspense of what he's going to do next. EC3 did the same thing, and then he got COVID, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right? Ricochet's going to have to change his narrative, change the way people think about him. And we'll see if he's able to do that if he leaves.
So, really interesting conversation there. So let's get a little bit into Wednesday, our favorite day of the week. One of the best things on the show was the sit down between Ciampa and Thatcher, a match that was supposed to happen last week. It's going to happen next week. One of the things that me and you have discussed since AEW is the fact that not every confrontation or contract signing has to end up with someone going through a table or some sort of big brawl. And once again, like NXT has done, with some of these specials, what they did a couple of months back with Gargano and Ciampa also, and also the thing they did the highlight package for Raquel and Rhea. They just had a good minute and a half sit down package with him talking about how much this match meant and everything. Got me really pumped up for a match, which otherwise it's an interesting little feud, but this took it to the next level once again.
I agree. And John Moore of ProWrestling.net pointed this out, so I'm going to give him credit. Former guest of the show, friend of the show. The thing that he said was it gives it more of a sports feel, right? Like we do this thing where it's pro wrestling, so they have to beat each other up for every time they see each other. There's a little bit of, I want to kick your ass, but we need to talk about this to build up people to watch it. Don't touch the other person before the match starts. And there's boxing does that where they have these sit downs with guys. I enjoy a little bit of the sports element to it. And I'm glad they did that on the show and in that promo. And I think that made me more interested in the match. we talked about this on the pre-show, but Thatcher has to win. I mean, he absolutely has to win, no doubt about it. So, we'll see what he does, but that is the match I'm absolutely most looking forward to next week. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I said I thought it was a good thing, and I like the fact that they're doing different things, unlike the main roster and things that have been done for years. Like I said before, with every time there's some contract signing, they do the old formula. So I like the fact that they're trying to reinvent the wheel in a good way. The other thing that happened on NXT this week was the debut of MSK with Nash Carter and Wes Lee, formerly of the Rascals. So before we talk about how good of their debut was, twofold. One, what in the world does MSK mean? And Nash Carter and Wes Lee. Can we get any more generic names?
The names are super generic. The name Nash Carter. Who names their kid Nash?
Nash Bridges.
And a black guy named Wes. I guess Wesley. Why not? I guess you can't call him Wesley Lee. Wesley. Yeah, pretty dumb names, but whatever. Just an interesting note. Interesting note on them. I was reading today. So Jeff Jarrett, was an Impact, obviously, for a long time. Really, really big fan of Wes Lee. And he's spectacular. Thought he could be the second coming of AJ Styles. Wow. So it will be, and that's one of the things that was quoted. Again, that's not 100% verified, but he is a big fan of Wes Lee, it sounds like. And he's a little small, so I think that would hurt him, on the main roster or something like that. I think he almost have to stay a tag. But I mean, he's the star of that tag team. But I like both of them, but he's the star of the tag team. So I mean, they're gonna get the big push. As far as the MSK thing, I hope that they have them cut a promo and establish who they are. And I obviously, I trust NXT to do that. And their music was awfully generic, so I was a little disappointed in their music. But we'll see. They got the win. It was a very, very good tag team match. NXT really could use them, and they may not win the Dusty Classic, but they're certainly going to go far.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how far they go. I think it's really good that they debuted in the Dusty Classic. I mean, other teams that have debuted in Dusty Classic were Ciampa and Gargano. So, I mean, that's another, so when a team debuts there's usually a future involved. So, and I think they were a pretty big signing for them. So I think I don't know if they'll win the whole entire thing, but I think they'll go pretty far. And I could see them even maybe possibly going in the finals and maybe losing to an Undisputed Era or, one of the other teams that they see big things in. What do you think, though, overall of the first round matches? Anything else really stick out to you otherwise?
Not really. The main event was fine. They did a Shawn Michaels style finish with the super kick with Shelton Benjamin years ago. The main event was fine. I think you could have some intriguing matchups. So we'll kind of see, how all that goes. But they could definitely have some intriguing matchups. And apparently some of this is going to be on 205 Live.
Oh, you saw that too. I actually just saw that 2 seconds ago, and I was going to tell you that, which came out of nowhere.
I mean, the brackets, there's a lot. I mean, they now have a women's Dusty Classic, and those brackets are long. So that's a lot of matches they have to have. So, and then I was trying to look at the brackets, and I was saying, what match are they going to put on 205 Live? So,
well, I can tell you right now, they're going to have Maverick and
Killian
Dane versus Curtis Stallion, who we've never actually seen on.
Okay, so that'll be a squash match. Okay.
And Graves, and the new guy.
So that'll be a squash match. Yeah.
And then you're gonna have Del Phasmo versus the Bollywood Boys.
Okay, another squash match. Okay, that makes sense. 2 squash matches. No way those teams are going to beat them. So that's not bad if they put that on 205 Live. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh no, I don't disagree with that, but it would be nice if they would have told us.
I think it's fine. Doesn't matter. I don't get worked up over stuff like
Are
that.
you gonna? Are you
Now if the finals aren't on there, if MSK's on 205 Live out of nowhere, I'll be a little annoyed. But stuff like that is not a big deal.
I guess so. The question I would ask you though is, are you going to watch 205 Live now this week?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The squash matches. There's you know who to win. You named the one team, and I knew who the winner was going to be. No, the squash. I'm not going to watch 205 Live. What do I watch?
I guess the idea of putting it on there is not going to be a success for you, at least for getting you to watch 205 Live. I agree with you.
No, there's nothing they have. You talk about a product that you can't get back. That's a show you can't get back.
Agreed. Otherwise, like I said, NXT was a solid show. They're setting up maybe a three-way at the next pay-per-view on Valentine's Day. It looks like maybe between O'Reilly, Dunn, and Balor for the title. You agree with me, or do you think it's just going to be Dunn?
Or maybe a four-way with Karrion Kross in there. Scarlett was putting that over today, or putting that over yesterday.
Really? Wow. Okay. I would have thought that would be. You would want to make that a one-on-one match, and that maybe. Maybe
it's who knows. And that way you could protect O'Reilly. I mean, at some point O'Reilly's gonna have to win the title, right? Or no?
O'Reilly.
I
don't know.
So I mean, yeah, maybe not. But yeah, no, I think NXT's got some interesting things in the work. I'm excited about the Women's Dusty Classic. I would love for the Women's Dusty Classic winner, which I think is going to be Ember Moon and Sashi, to go against whoever the Asuka and Charlotte. Like, that would be a freaking fantastic match. I would love everything about that. So, and I would love for the women's tag team champions to be in NXT because they're the best women on the roster. So, but we'll see where everything goes.
Yeah, I still like to find out if Dakota Kai was ever let out of the locker, or if she's still waiting for find her.
No, but she's still there.
She's still there. Okay. But Jay, so the other show on Wednesday that we watch in the 8 to 10 o'clock Eastern window is AEW every week. I think AEW is another solid show, setting up for next week. They are going to have a three-way between all the members of the Inner Circle. I think every week they have a lot of good chemistry. They had the Sammy Hagar joke, which was funny. That was great. I didn't think it was a blowaway show. I mean, and it's one of those weeks where Brian Cage and Darby Allin had a really good match. It was a feud they built for basically 8 months apparently, which they were able to deliver on. Kingston and Pac had a good match. Everything on the show was good. But it's one of these weeks where it felt like nothing really stood out. And, I think.
But Corey, here's the thing, though. That's okay, right? I think AEW has to do more of just have a good show sometimes. We don't need Shaq. We don't need Snoop. We don't need all the, you know what I mean? Let's just have a good show sometimes. And have a couple of weeks of having a good show and having a couple of slow builds. And, that's all you need to do. Sometimes AEW is a little bit of, we need to do this big, thing. And maybe Tony Khan was distracted with them hiring Urban Meyer today. But
yeah. He's all elite, apparently.
By the way, shout out to the Audible. So maybe that is kind of what they had to do. I don't know, but I think sometimes they need to do this. Have shows that are not crazy. They had angles on there with the Bullet Club, and so they had stuff. But it's we don't need 18 million. And it still was kind of a crazy show, but it wasn't as, everything's happening every single second type of show. And I thought the main event was very good, but of course, Sting is on every week now. He's, like every wrestler there, Anyway.
I mean, it'll be interesting what they do with Sting, what type of cinematic match they do with him at some point, and when they actually do it. But, we'll find out as time goes along with that. But Jay, I think the big thing to come out of AEW, at least the thing I'm going to remember twofold, and like most weeks, is, how they use the women's division in AEW. And this week we had the highs and lows of the women's division. Jay, I'm going to let you choose. You want to talk about the high or the low of the women's division this week?
I mean, we'll start positive. We could talk about the high. I guess you want to go into the Tay Conti match.
Yeah, so let's it was, and we'll go twofold with this. One, Tay Conti, a woman who was in the NXT developmental system, I think starting about 2016 or 17. She had, came across big where for one night she was part of Undisputed Era, then was never mentioned again, which is I've always found kind of funny. She
I did not even know that. That's
yeah,
news to me.
it was funny. She debuted with them, and then on a Nikki Cross segment, and all of a sudden it was like never mentioned again. Very weird. But then all of a sudden, she was basically never used. She was let go. She's basically, she's had I think like 10 or 11 matches on either Dark or Dynamite. She's improved a ton. I mean, she was working with a really good trainer and Serena Deebs, who is the NWA champion. I think it's by far one of the top 4 or 5 matches on TV that AEW has had when it's come to the women's division since their inception. Some of the Rio matches have been very good, and the Thunder Rosa match versus Sheeta is most likely the best match that they've produced on TV. Most likely, but give them credit there. I think they're still developing stuff with them, and especially where they might go with maybe the Dark Order with her joining.
Well, here's the thing. Take on to it and go into her whole history.
Right,
I apologize for the burp. I apologize for the burp. She has ability. She's a very good athlete. We know she has the judo background and stuff. So she's someone who was released, and I was surprised was released. I mean, she's obviously very attractive too. I think she could do some. She's young, so I'm surprised that she was released. I think maybe she asked for her release. I forget, but the issue with AEW is they need more women like Serena Deeb. They need more women who help out these younger women. Serena Deeb's a veteran. She's a coach, and I'm sure they use her in that capacity a lot in AEW. And they need more. They need to balance out the young Anna Jay, Ty Conti, whatever, with the Evilise. They don't have enough veteran women, and so they need to kind of figure that balance out. And I know we're gonna talk about what the hell happened in the waiting room, but they're gonna have to figure out that balance. But that was a perfect example of you have someone, and Anna Jay and Sheeta was a solid match. So I don't think it should have been for the title, but it was a solid match. But same thing, you have a veteran, someone who's really good in the ring, helping a younger person. They shouldn't have, and obviously they're friends, they wouldn't have, but you shouldn't have an Anna Jay against a Ty Conti. You shouldn't have a Penelope Ford against an Anna Jay. Those matches are going to be terrible. You need to have veteran until these women all kind of start to figure it out, because it's almost like the men's division is let's have all this, all these guys, and the women it's like let's have it basically be a developmental brand, which is okay, but you have to do it in the right way.
I agree, and like I said, I think there's a good future with both of these women, and it's good to see how they've been integrated. So we did the positive, and you got Sheeta, you got Penelope Ford, you got some good women there. But the other segment, which I think has been split on being a partial total train wreck, but also having its fun moments because it was a total train wreck. We had the waiting room for the first time on Dynamite, which has been on Dark for a couple of weeks, and it's had some good segments with Marco Stunt and SCU. There's been a couple of them that have been good, but Britt Baker, who is a very big personality and is good in the ring, and we'll see how good she is when she faces Thunder Rosa in a match on February 3rd, I believe it is. But you had the segment with Cody Rhodes, which set up Jade Cargill and Red Velvet. It was we all know this was originally supposed to be with Brandy Rhodes, who, congratulations, we've said in the last couple of weeks, her and Cody are having a baby coming up. But neither Jade Cargill or Red Velvet are ready in the ring to produce what they're most likely are going to be expected to in this feud. And Jade Cargill looks like a star, but she can't. And I gave her more credit the first time around than Jay did. Jay was absolutely correct. She's not ready to be speaking on the mic. Is this setting up somewhere down the line, a match between Shaquille O'Neal and Cody Rhodes? Sure, and nobody wants to see it on this podcast, but back to the main point, Jade Cargill is not ready for these type of segments. And Jade Cargill, as far as we know, has had no matches. She might be the greatest wrestler we've ever seen when she gets in there, but how are we supposed to know that? She never had a match. And Red Velvet's had, 2 matches on Dynamite and 12, maybe 8 or 9 matches on Dark. And from what I've seen, she's okay, but she's not ready to be in this type of thing.
Fucking green as grass. This is where, and listen, and everyone can say I'm an NXT mark, and that's fine. I'll accept that. They do things that are not great too. But one thing they do know how to do is they do know how to highlight weaknesses. Jade Cargill would not be on the show this often. She would wrestle in a match against a jobber, and she would look fantastic because, she looks like a million bucks. She is. I've never seen someone who looks, she's like a specimen. Like it is. She is just, it's like she's chiseled. It's incredible, her physique, and she's bigger than Cody. It's funny, but they would highlight her in a way, and you could say for AEW that she looks like and that sometimes I get in the old school wrestling phase. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was watching wrestling from the mid 80s. So we had the mid 80s with the Rick Rudes, the Mr. Perfects, Hogan, all those guys, to the kind of lull in the 90s there, to the Attitude Era in the late 90s. The early 90s was a little rough for all wrestling fans, except tag teams. To the Attitude Era, to what we have today. And so sometimes I am a little bit more old school. You have Jade Cargill come out and kind of, kill a girl, beat her up, show her athleticism, have a squash match, and that establishes her. And maybe in 2021, what she's doing now establishes her more. I don't know. And so I'm always one who can say, like, maybe I am not right in the way that I look at wrestling because I'm a little bit old school. But, oh, God, the segment was a mess anyway. The segment was just a mess. Mm-hmm. But Red Velvet's green is, and this is what I'm talking about. I just said, you pair a veteran up. Big Swole is no Ric Flair in the ring, but I'm sure she can get a better match than Red Velvet. Also, can we get a better name than Red Velvet? I love me some Red Velvet cupcakes and cookies.
Straight out of your mama's kitchen.
I get the straight out of your mama's kitchen. They could call her some Red Velvet. You know what I mean? The name is just so limiting. I believe she got engaged too, so congratulations to her. She seems like a sweetheart of a person, but the name is horrible. She's green as grass. What kind of match is that gonna be?
Not good.
Yeah, you can't. And that's the problem too. You talk about women's wrestling and how it used to be with, before Lita and Trish, and even when Lita and Trish were there, they still had the Tori Wilsons who couldn't wrestle and the Stacey Keeblers, these women who couldn't wrestle, and they did bra and pennies matches. I'm not saying this is going to be a bra and pennies match, but they're going to be hyping this matchup as a big match, and JR is going to try to call this match as a legitimately big time match, and it's going to be 2 women who are great athletes, who are green as grass, and who are on a stage that is probably too big for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I said, segment ended well with, announcing when the Thunder Rosa Britt Baker matches, like you said.
Yeah, Thunder Rosa's promo was very good.
Oh, absolutely.
Very, very good.
And and we'll see where that goes. And as I said, I think in the beginning, the reason why they pushed back that match was because Thunder Rosa came in contact with somebody who had COVID, so safety precautions. They're giving that time a little bit more, and so we'll see how that goes. It's on a bigger stage, on a quote unquote super show, not a pay-per-view, but so now it'll be something bigger, and we'll see where that goes. But Jay, we covered a lot of interesting things. Before we get into our last topic, how about we talk a little bit about some of the stuff on the Life Group Network and how they can go and follow us on the social medias and other things. You're muted, sir.
I am muted. You were right. The one time I wasn't muted and I burped, and now I'm started talking, I'm muted. It's a whole mess.
I
I try to mute myself because like sometimes
Right.
I might, whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. This is what I was trying to say is I'm so happy to be on this Life Group network. I'm trying to be more active in the wrestling group and in the football group and all these other things. I've said this before, not to put it over falsely, because I don't talk about shit that I don't respect or like. But the Wrestle Life group and all the life groups, mostly I'm involved in football and wrestling. Football, obviously, because it's going active now. It is fantastic conversations. There's not people in there who are like assholes and not good people. And there's people who really know their stuff about wrestling, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them. So the Wrestle and the football group is great too. There's some Bears fan. I forget who the Bears fan is, but yeah, I feel sorry for him. Congratulations to the Green Bay Packers fans, the Detroit Lions fans, and the Minnesota Vikings fans, because the Chicago Bears kept Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, and they get to draft hopefully another shitty quarterback. So congratulations. I live in Chicago, so whenever a team does a move, before the team does that move, they should poll the fans of the other team and say, would you enjoy the other team doing this move? And if that's a Bill Simmons thing. And if they do, don't fucking do it. Like any Green Bay fan could have told you, yeah, keep Ryan Pace and Matt. They're great. Like we love them and all that they do. Did anyone watch that Bears game? Oh my, it was first of all, I had the Bears plus 10 and plus 9.5. So I got totally screwed there. That's another story altogether. But all right. Anyway, on to the plugs. We are at Work Shoot Pod on Instagram and on Twitter. So check us out. I try to be pretty active, especially on Wednesdays when the big shows are on. Mondays, I would just have, I have enough stress at work. I can't tweet about all the stress that I have watching Raw. And then we try to do the pay-per-views. Hard to Kill. We didn't even talk about Hard to Kill. Hard to Kill is this weekend. So that should be an interesting show. I wonder, they're building it up to be a big pay-per-view. So we'll kind of see how that goes. So, maybe we'll actually, I will not be live tweeting that. I will be away. But anyway, maybe Corey will.
I'm pretty sure you'll be pretty intoxicated, either celebrating a Packers victory or in the corner saying, Corey, if you text me or call me, never speak to me again.
Yeah, well, I think the Saturday night game is it the Bills and the Ravens? I don't know what the Saturday night game is. But so there's just it'll be hard to watch that show, but maybe Corey will watch it and tweet. So we're both on Twitter at Workshoot Pod. Mm-hmm. Check us out, Workshoot Wrestling Podcast. I Googled us the other day, and you find us like anyway, right? We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, just find us, Workshoot Wrestling Podcast. As far as the other podcasts for the life group, some really cool stuff. You got Dong City, the baseball podcast. On Mondays, you got the Audible, the football podcast. I'm sure they're talking about all the stuff going on with Urban Meyer. You got the Step Back with the NBA. I have not done well betting the NBA this season. I have no idea how the league works right now.
So Jay,
big Harden trade, obviously.
So Jason, you just mentioned that just quickly before we move on to the Thursday podcast, which I actually have no idea what the Thursday podcast is. Who's heavier, James Harden right now or La Parker? So
my wife, we were watching. I know it's an aside. Sorry, I know this is a wrestling podcast. My wife and I were watching the Rockets against the Lakers, and we put it on the game. And my wife, now this is not. I did not prompt her at all. She looked at him and she goes, "Who is that guy?" I go, "That's James Harden." She goes, "He's fat."
I think he ate James Harden.
She goes, like, I don't know if he's fat for like a real person, but he's fat for a basketball player. I'm like, yeah, he just doesn't have a great basketball body. And like, he just does not, my buddy sent me a meme with a picture of Kevin Durant and then a picture of Mark Henry next to him, indicating that it's supposed to.
You see that though? Mark Henry is a marketing genius because that meme went out there. Now Mark Henry is selling, I guess on Pro Wrestling Tees, a '99 Brooklyn Nets jersey that says Henry on the back.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm waiting for my pro wrestling t-shirt to come in. I got to call them actually. I'll debut that maybe next week on the show. So we are on Thursdays, Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast, and in Total Bases, the baseball podcast, another baseball podcast on Sunday. That is the brainchild of Henry Maldonado. So check that out on Sundays. So all the sports are covered. Although I feel like I should try to get maybe a soccer podcast or something coming out at some point. But
What? I'm sorry, I took a little nap when you said that word.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say like a betting podcast.
Soccer's a big sport.
I'm sure it is. I thought you were going to say a betting podcast. I'd listen to that.
Well, I would do that, but I'm not good at it, so I don't know that anybody want to listen to me.
That's true. So
right now, my parlay's looking good. I got two hockey teams playing right now: the Bruins and the Hurricanes. Let's go.
Oh God!
Ask me if I can name one player on either team.
I'm gonna go with no.
Absolutely not.
But you're going against my team? Screw you. Did you even know the Bruins are facing the Devils tonight?
No, I know the Devils stink. Yeah,
That's
no,
true.
that I do know. Yeah, I do know.
So we have one of the podcasts that we love to talk about, our sister podcast. Before we were lucky enough to join the Life podcast, the people who were with us at the beginning of this journey, us coming back. Jay, do you remember the name of that podcast?
You don't know Jackie. You don't know Jackie. Great comedy podcast, especially in these continuing troubling times. Good podcast. They make fun of Corey the whole time. Come on. And it's a good show. I've been on it a couple of times when I've been invited, and it's been a fun listen, and it's fun to be on the show.
Hey, if we ever get a season 5 of Issa Rae's wonderful show on HBO Max, we'll have you back.
Oh, it's coming back. No, it's definitely coming. It's definitely coming back. They were doing some HBO Max, pumping up some. There's a Denzel movie coming on HBO Max. So yeah. Oh yeah. It looks. Who knows? It's probably gonna be bad, but it looks good.
If you didn't realize, I forgot the name of the show there for a second. I totally just blanked. But Jay, final subject of the day. A little bit of a big one here, but something that me and you have spoken about offline, and I've seen reports over the last year since she was let go by Impact Wrestling. Tessa Blanchard, second generation star. A lot of people, last year when they were doing, their top 50 women's wrestlers, and I'm sure on PWI's top 50, I'm pretty sure she was like in the top 4 or 5. Still a free agent. There were rumors earlier in mid last year that NXT might be a destination. Nothing has come out of it. I mean, she could be a surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble, but there has been talk that within AEW that the idea of her coming in has softened a little bit. Some are saying that's a possibility. Others are saying, she's too much of a poison pill. We're seeing, Red Velvet being pushed at the moment. Jade Cargill. She is a red flag on stuff that she did, and we'll talk about in a moment what it is. But Jay, AEW's women division, they've got Thunder Rosa, they've got Sheeta, they've got they've got Deebs. What do you do here?
Yeah, they have these like women that are really good, and it's like it falls off a cliff. Because I think Britt Baker is okay. Mm-hmm. But I think Britt Baker can get herself over enough on the mic that she doesn't need to be great in the ring to be. She can be okay, because they're gonna put her against women who are good. So I think Britt Baker can be all right. I do think Big Swole's someone who needs to really. And I think she's had some good matches, but she's someone who needs to continue to get better. Anyway, as far as Tessa Blanchard, I mean, Corey, she wrestled a match for you guys who may have watched the Mae Young Classic. She wrestled a match against, I think it was Kairi Sane. I think it was the year that Kairi Sane won. Or did Tony win that year? I forget who won that year. But Tony Storm, I think, won that year. Anyway, it was a match against Kairi Sane and Tessa Blanchard. It was in the first round, and you knew Tessa Blanchard was going to lose because they were pushing Kairi Sane. It was the best match of the tournament. It was a first round match, so it wasn't super long. It was a fantastic match. Her feud with Gail Kim and I would watch those YouTube clips of her cutting promos and stuff. One of the best built women's feuds of the year that year. She won the heavyweight title of the whole company. She's great. The thing about her is wrestling is in her blood, obviously, but she's also really, really naturally good at it. And she's a female superstar. If she was on Raw tomorrow and they built her right, look, they didn't need to exactly do all the right things with her. The audience would see her as, okay, she's different. She's different. And I think one of the issues with AEW is she might come in there and say, I am way better than any of these people. And that might be an issue. You know, the other thing is she was an Impact and she left Impact on bad terms, but I don't believe the women who worked there had anything bad to say about her, the women who are still there now. I know Allison Kay had an issue with her, but I don't know if any of the women who are there had a big problem with her. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know, but it doesn't sound like they did. It sounds like women who were free agents and other women kind of came out against her. So she's such a talent. I think if you're AEW, I think they desperately need someone like her. If they want the women's division to be more than a developmental brand.
So just quickly, in January 2020, multiple female wrestlers came forward with bullying and racism allegations against Tessa Blanchard, including an incident involving Blanchard spitting in a Black woman's face and calling her racial slurs. The woman in question, Black Rose, later stated that the incident did indeed take place.
And that story was corroborated by other people too, which is
right. So
that's always
And we've spoken about, and it wasn't a race issue, but we spoke about last week in regards to the villain Marty Scurll, how AEW, should be the perfect place with involvement with the Young Bucks and being part of the Bullet Club and everything. But the stuff with the speaking out movement and the way that, Tony Khan has handled that, he wants a very not family friendly, but, a good relationship between the boys and having a certain type of atmosphere there. Is it kind of a double standard because you're a star? I understand star treatment, you're going to be treated a different way, and absolutely stars are treated a certain way. We understand that. But how does that affect your locker room? And because your division is so weak right now, especially, and maybe if things clear up, Rio comes back and, some point Chris Statlander comes back from the injury and other things happen, your human division gets better and some of these people who are in developmental become, as good as we hope they could be at some point. But as I said in the beginning, do the positives outweigh the negatives of what Tessa Blanchard could do for your company? A company like WWE, who has other problems like Austin Theory and, a Velveteen Dream, who could be out, any moment now, who knows, but they deal with this type of stuff. They're a big enough company that could just get lost in the shuffle. But for AEW, who is, like I said, Hulk Hogan will never be part of our company because of the racist stuff he said. Can you bring in Tessa Blanchard? That's that's the key point here.
So a couple of things. One, Tessa Blanchard, guess how old she is?
What is she, like 24, 25?
She's 25 years old. She's a prodigy. Okay, so a couple of things. One, as you guys may see, if you're watching on video or, if you're listening, I will let you know I am African American. So,
wow.
No. So I'm African American. So, these kind of stories hit me hard. The Hogan story was real bad because it was videotaped, and I'm married to a white woman, and so to hear the whole thing of like, this guy's not good enough to date my daughter because of the color of his skin, that stuff always really resonates very, very hard with me. Because it just resonates very, very hard with me. It's like I'm not good enough to date a white person just because I'm Black, and so that's tough. And so the stuff with Tessa Blanchard's terrible. It's really, really bad. She was probably 21 years old when this happened. There's no excuse for that at all. We've seen stuff with Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. We've seen stuff with Deshaun Jackson. We've seen stuff with the pitcher Josh Hader with the Brewers.
Sure.
So we've seen this, like we've seen racist things happen and
When you're younger,
said
people grow up.
before.
Right? Yeah.
What?
People grow
Yeah,
up.
and people grow up, or they get caught, so they will feel bad about it. So some people do. Now Jackson Riker's a grown man, so at this point he is where he is. And WWE still allows him to be on TV, which is insane to me.
Yeah.
So Tessa Blanchard, I don't know. I think the first thing you have to do is you have to talk to the female locker room.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to the whole locker room, not just the female locker room. Talk to all the locker room, particularly talk to the African American wrestlers, and ask them, are you okay with, and the Latinx wrestlers, all the wrestlers, but especially the minority wrestlers, and say, are you okay with after everything that's transpired with this woman, are you okay bringing her in? If the wrestlers, and that's something the WWE would never do, they don't give a shit. If they say yes, we'd be okay with bringing her in, then you bring her in. We talk about the kind of the football life podcast, the Audible. A lot of these NFL teams have like a veterans committee where the coach will tell the veterans, hey, I'm thinking about signing this player who is not, they don't do that every time, but for special cases, we're thinking about signing this player who could be a locker room cancer or whatever. And oftentimes the team has to sign off on whether that's a good idea. There's a reason why you've seen guys not sign for a long time. I'm not talking about like Kaepernick or Eric Davis. I'm talking about guys who had a lot of other issues and who were kind of locker room cancers. So if you do that with AEW and the locker room says, hey, we're okay, especially, Scorpio Sky, Big Swole, Big Swole is very much about like the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that. If those people say it's okay for me. I'm okay, and I think everybody else should be okay. But you also give her a contract where if there's any shit that goes down, there's no margin forever. If anything goes down, you're out. So you also do that too. So that's how I would handle it.
Yeah, I think that's a very smart way to handle it. Like I said, and you can see the people that they are pushing in this angle, both young African American females who, like I said, might not be ready for this spot. And
sure, shit not ready. Sure,
and the person who you could be bringing
spot.
in would be basically kind of replacing them in a high-ranking spot in the company. So I mean, it's a tricky situation. But Jay, I appreciate you taking this conversation very seriously and giving your heartfelt opinion on, once again, a subject that for some people might be hard to talk about, especially in these times. So
listen, I'm drinking a really good beer. I'm in a good mood. My friends in Rochester, New York, my teacher friends are starting to get the vaccine, so that's great. Hopefully it comes to, hopefully the 1B phase comes to Illinois soon. Sharon and I are going away for a couple of days. So, I'm in a pretty good mood. And I think these are things that are important for people to hear about too, and getting different perspectives, not like Tessa Blanchard said this thing, she's a race, she's gone forever, or she didn't mean it, let's bring her back. There's so much stuff that's in the gray in life other than Trump. There's so much stuff that's in the gray in life that we have to always have to kind of see where everything is at, in my opinion. But not certainly not 45. There's no gray there. He's been impeached twice. He's the only president to be that way. There's no gray there.
Okay.
You're impeached twice.
Okay.
And I know Corey wants to be Mr. Down the Middle or whatever, but there's no down the middle here because the Republicans voted for the impeachment too.
I don't disagree. I think you should have got not this podcast. I totally agree. After what happened last Monday, she should be impeached this time around. So Jay, as everyone gets ready to enjoy this weekend, enjoy the slate of football games, enjoy the start of hockey, enjoy watching Harden. Maybe not eat 7 burritos a night at the local strip club in Brooklyn. Apparently, that's what he was doing to stay out of shape. So he got traded in Houston. Might affect their economy a little bit as a result. But Jay, enjoy the football. Good luck with the Green Bay Packers this weekend. Enjoy your trip in little serenity. I know you can't say it because your wife might beat you up, but go Browns. And Jay, as always, enjoy Hard Target, and the final word is yours.
2 things. Lord Octopus, Hot Butcher this week. That's the beer of the week. It's absolutely fantastic. That being said, I think we're done here. See ya.